Hello, welcome back to the channel. So, if you couldn't tell by the title, today we're going to go play with some dahlias. Now, many of you in the Northeast or the Northwest or anywhere where it's freezing, you've already been dealing with your dahlias, or you've been taking up your dahlias, or you're just on the verge of going, what do I do with my dahlias? If you're growing dahlias. If you're not growing dahlias, my question is why not? Dahlias to me are a wonderful flower. They come in various shapes and sizes and colors, and they're just great. And probably one of the best parts about dahlias to me is the fact that you can divide them yearly and just get more and more and more dahlias. The biggest downside is, again, if you live in those freezing climates, you have to dig up your dahlias, and that's to prevent the tubers from freezing. Dahlias grow from, if you didn't know, or again, expert gardeners, you would know all this. You guys with 20, 30, 40, 50 years lifetime experience in dahlias, you know all this. For the newbies, if there's any newbies around, they grow from a tuber. So almost think of a potato, and it's usually a clump of tubers, various shapes and sizes, depending upon the dahlia. And then they throw up one or more stems from that. And what you can do is at the end of the year, you can dig them up to prevent them from freezing. And because if they freeze, ice crystals form within the tubers, damaging the tubers, and then the tubers wind up rotting and dying. And it's not a good thing. It's pretty obvious. But if you dig them up, you can put them someplace frost-free or freeze-free and store them over the winter and then replant them. You can divide them when you dig them up, or you can wait until the following spring sometimes to divide them. And there's pros and cons to both of them. And throughout this video, I'm going to mention several other gardeners who do quite a bit of work with dahlias and how they handle them. Now, I'm in growing zone 8A, Eastern North Carolina. I do not have to dig up my dahlias. Today, I'm going to dig up a couple of my dahlias for various reasons, and I'll talk about that when we do that. But I do have a few more to clean up from when we had our first light frost a week or two ago. So I have about 3, 4 left standing, but they're really looking bad. There's actually one that did put out a flower, and maybe I'll leave them for the next couple of days. Maybe see how it goes this week. We might be getting into some light frost territory early in the mornings, maybe a couple of times this week. So that may kill off that last dahlia. But again, I'll show you that dahlia when we get there. It's the last flower of the year, which is really awesome. So I'm going to stop prattling now, and I'm going to grab a pitchfork, and we're going to go dig up a couple of dahlias, and then we're going to clean up the dahlias, and we're going to do all that fun stuff. So it's all about dahlias today. So this sad looking thing right here in front of me is a dahlia that has died back. It started to put on some new growth, but that new growth got whacked with that frost. So it's time to go. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to cut this back. And now let me make this absolutely positively clear. There is no 100% absolute by law, you have to do it this way method. Every gardener has their own slight method. There are general rules of thumb. So generally you cut back the dahlia. You don't have to. You could dig it up without cutting it back, but generally you would cut it back. Me personally, I'm gonna leave about 6 to 8 inches of stem left. I will then tease this up out of the ground using the pitchfork and then wash it off and go from there. Some gardeners who have dahlias, they don't necessarily do it that way. They do it slightly differently. I just watched a video this morning by the Impatient Gardener, and if you haven't seen her, go check her out. She just did a video on dahlias and how she did it. And I believe she left all of her stems on some of hers when she dug them out. Maybe all of them. I was drinking coffee, not paying attention, not fully awake. So, but she may have left all of her stems on and then taken them off after she dug them out of the ground. The only reason you would do this is just convenience. You forget. It's not a hard rule that you have to do this. I'm going to take this dahlia up. And I'm going to take this dahlia up for a couple of different reasons. One, it's throwing up a lot of stems, which means it may be ready to be divided if it's not already dividing itself. And we'll talk about that more once I get it up out of the ground. And two, I'm not happy with the space that it's in or the location. So I'm going to take this up, clean it up. If it can be divided today, or maybe I'll leave it till the spring. Again, I'll talk about that once we get it up. So I should stop prattling now and just get this stupid thing up, right? All right, where's my pruners? Move that out of the way. Now I can more clearly see what I'm dealing with here. Now when you pry them up, you want to move You don't want to go right here, obviously. Maybe it's not obvious to you. You don't want to spear right here because there's probably tubers right underneath those stems. So you want to come a little ways out. And hopefully we won't spear any tubers. We did get a ½ inch of rain over the weekend, which was pretty exciting because if you've been watching my previous videos, I stated how dry we are. And we really haven't had any rain for October/November so far, other than the rain we just got last night, which is all pretty exciting because the garden needs it. There we go. I'm probably getting in the way of the camera here, that's all right. Gently giving a pull this guy. There we go. That's a beautiful thing. Let's see if I can get a lot of this mulch and whatnot off. There we go. Beautiful. Oh, I'm seeing a big old clump of tubers here. Hopefully there's no ants. I don't see any ants. Oh, there we go. This looks good. Very good. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. I can just start brushing off some of this dirt here. And I already see, I mean, there's a lot of tubers here. Now, not all these tubers will be viable. I'll discuss more of that later once we get this washed off. But overall, we're looking pretty good. That looks pretty good. That's a lot of tubers right there. This plant has been in the ground for a few years now. So let's go wash this off. So I'm going to pull out my phone now, try to give you guys a closer look as to what I'm seeing, and we'll talk a little more about the dahlia tuber itself and what I plan on doing with it. This is the clump that I just pulled out. Now, let's say you planted a singular tuber in the springtime. It may not look like this when you pull it out of the ground. It may be a lot smaller, and that's only because it's been in the ground for only a year. Like I said, this has been in the ground a couple of years. I'm in growing zone 8A. Our ground does not freeze. This is the bottom side. So like this light one right here, that's a new tuber. That's a new tuber. That's possibly the mother tuber. That's a rotted tuber. Sorry, I'm trying to also not get the shade in there. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break out my snips and we're going to start cleaning this up. I don't know if I'm going to divide it today, but let's start by cleaning it up. And I'll show you what I mean by cleaning it up. And again, there's 1,000,001 videos out there. I recommend, actually I see some fire ants also on it, so I'm going to have to be careful. I'll put gloves on. I've already been bitten once so far this morning. But there's other videos out there. And as I mentioned when we were first digging it up, the Impatient Gardener just did a video on it. She's done a bunch of videos and she's up in Wisconsin. I think our growing zone's like 5 or something. There's my favorite all-time dahlia gardener, Dahliaholic, which is Jeff and Heather. And he is the one who is just absolutely positive. He's passionate. 90% of his garden is all dahlias. He grows various sizes, shapes, colors. He's been doing it for so long. He's been trying to breed his own. It's just really a great channel to watch if you want to get into dahlias. It takes you throughout the year, pulling them out in the spring, growing them on, how he grows them on, why he grows them on, the different stages of which he grows them. He's absolutely fascinating. It's a great channel to watch. He doesn't put out videos every week or every day or every month, so you may have to search his back catalog of videos that he's done, but he's been doing this for years. Just great dahlia content. So again, Dahliaholic is another fabulous one to watch. Let me get my snippers and then we'll start doing some cleanup on this guy. All right, I'm sorry about the shadow from the camera. I'm trying to pull you guys in as close as possible for me to do what I need to do. But before you store your dahlia, all of this, you can theoretically stuff it into a box someplace like this. There's going to be problems though. First of all, this thin stuff, all these little thin roots, they all dry up and fall off and rot anyways. You also want to you want to take care of your dahlias now before you stuff them inside a box to look for damage. So here's a damaged root. This will rot. All right, so that's never a good thing. Where's that damaged tuber? I see a couple of tubers here with some serious nicks. Those nicks can lead to rot. Oh, there's one with a hole in it. It's important to remove dead, diseased, dying from your dahlia. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to start snipping away. And remember how I said I left the stems? One of the things that some gardeners will do is they will take the tuber and leave it upside down like so to let all the moisture drain out, because you don't want excess moisture in your tubers, because that will then create rot. I'm just going to start taking these down to about 1 inch to 2 inches. Again, there's no hard rule as to how you do this. These may even get cut down more as I start trimming this. Let me see if I can cut this one out of here. Hopefully you can see all of the holes here. So this is a rotten tuber. Now, insects like the fire ants could have put the holes there, more than likely. There could have been some damage to the tuber, in which case, again, the insects took advantage and they just started chomping away at this. You don't want to leave this attached to your plant. This is no good. This goes to the compost pile. Now, like I said, all these tails can come off. Definitely want to cut back any of the damaged tails. And as you sit there and trim this, you're going to start opening up space within the plant, and obviously that's going to help as you process this. This is another rotten tuber because it has a nice hole in it, so that one's no good. This little guy here is damaged. I'm going to cut him out. This right here, I've never liked these. I always feel like they're going to get broken in the box, so I'm just going to snip that off. That's a bad one. It's rotten. I found that very rotten tuber, so that obviously is going to be cut out, because if you leave a rotten tuber, it can that rot can spread from this tuber to all your good tubers, and then you've just lost your entire thing, which no one wants to do. They don't want to lose their entire plant that they've invested time, effort, energy into. You don't also have to use clippers like this. I've seen, for instance, Dahliaholic. He uses bonsai scissors. See how rotted that is? That's no good. He uses bonsai scissors. I've seen other gardeners use kitchen shears. You're essentially just looking for a tool that you're comfortable with that will accomplish the job. And if I had to give one piece of advice, is be ruthless. Get in here, cut as much out as you think is dead, diseased, or damaged, because it will save you headaches in the long term. And if you're unsure about cutting out a tuber, cut it out. Seriously, just because, again, anything that's damaged, diseased, I'm not sure about that one. I'm just going to cut it out. Some of the neck has its outer skin removed. It's possible it could rot in the box over the winter. I don't want that. That looks good. That looks good. Nope, that one's broken. Any tuber that has a broken neck. So for instance, all right, so let me see if I can show this. This is the neck, or what I call the neck. Okay, this is the main body of the tuber, and then the tail, the root tail you had coming off of here. Now there is one other part to this whole anatomy, and that would be the eye. And the eye is normally at the top of a neck. So I don't see anything right now super obvious, but maybe if I wash this off once more, I'll find something. There's a few more roots here I want to cut off. So let me finish cutting off the roots, and then I'll give this another rinse. And then maybe if I see any, I'll show you an eye and then go from there. We're back. I'm going to pull out my phone again so I can get a close-up for you guys. And I've done some more cleanup and I've done some more root trimming. But here's what I want to point out to you. Right here, see if the camera will focus. There we go, right there. Those 3 little white dots, those are the eyes. So basically that's going to be next year's stems. So if I wanted to, I could cut carefully right above it, cut out this whole area, and as long as I have that, the neck, and the tuber, I have a plant for next year, and that will be one division. And if I spin this around, do I see anything else obvious? Possibly another one right in here, another one or two. So what I could do is I could turn around and, like I said, cut that out and then put that into storage, which is entirely possible. Sometimes that's another benefit of going through, cleaning your clump, looking for all those rotten bits and pieces, so that you can then find all the things that you need to cut out so that you could put this into storage. Now, you don't have to divide it now. You can divide it now if you want, but you don't have to. You could, once it's cleaned up and dried, and by dry I mean you could tip it upside down, let all this excess moisture dry out. Anything that's still left in the stems will drip out or come out hopefully. And then you put this in storage. And I'll get to more about storage in a second. The other thing you do is wait until the spring. When the springtime comes, then you could turn around and hopefully as it warms up and as this dahlia wants to start growing again, it'll start pushing eyes, and then you could see those eyes a little more clearly and then divide the plant at that point. Wait a day or two after you've cut the tuber off with the eyes. It must have eyes. So you cut the eyes off with the tuber. You wait a day or two for everything to scar up, heal up, and then you could stick it in the ground or a pot and then grow on from there. So that's the general gist of the whole dahlia tuber thing. Now we are going to do a little more cleanup in the dahlia beds, and I'm going to talk about what I'm going to be doing to prepare those beds for this upcoming winter. Laura from Garden Answer is another great resource to watch when it comes to taking care of your dahlias. So Dahliaholic, Garden Answer, Impatient Gardener, and there's probably a half a dozen other YouTubers out there that do a way better job at explaining and demonstrating how to take care of your dahlias. One other thing before we get to the in-grounds that I want to mention is storing your dahlias. If you go watch those other channels, they're all going to mention basically the same thing. I'm going to mention this too. When you store your dahlias, do not put them in a growing medium like potting soil. Don't go out and buy a bag of potting soil and stick these in potting soil, because if you put them someplace where there's the slightest amount of chance that they might start growing, let's say a warm greenhouse, they might start growing on you, which is not necessarily a good thing if it's February or March. So you want to store them in sort of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here. Inert material. I believe Laura from Garden Answer does vermiculite. I know Monty Don over at Gardener's World there, he does newspaper. His growing conditions and storage conditions are also much different, which I'm going to touch on in a second. Some people have used sawdust, wood chips. I think the Impatient Gardener used wood chips this morning. I've used a mixture of old compost and peat. I've done straight up peat. There's different mixtures you could do, but when you store these, you want to essentially be an inert material. You don't want to stack them on top of each other touching, because if there is rot in one, it will spread to the other. So you want to give them just maybe an inch of space. Doesn't need to be a lot, just maybe an inch of space. And you want to check on them throughout the winter, especially if you have a long northern winter. Check on them throughout the winter. These tubers will dry up. They will shrivel up and dry up. There's moisture inside of these. So you want to make sure that they're moist. So if you're going to put them, let's say, in the damp, cold basement, just give them a check once a month. Look at the bulbs, see if they're okay. If they start looking like they're shriveling, or if they just feel really dry, maybe just give them a spray with a spray bottle. You don't need to soak them down. You're not watering, you're not soaking them in water. Just enough to give them a little bit of humidity. Now, I mentioned Monty Don a second ago. He stores his in newspaper, but he puts them into a dark, cold, damp shed. And when I mean damp, like, he's over in the UK. He's in England. It's damp. So that dampness helps those dahlia tubers maintain the moisture within. You just want to keep them from shriveling up and dying on you. I've had it happen to me before because I was lax in my checking on them, and that then leads to a whole nother bit of, can you recover a dried up dahlia tuber, which there are videos out there, and I've done some videos, and I have recovered some dried up dahlia tubers. It depends upon how dry they get. But don't want to do that. So just put them in inert material, keep them dampish. You can go check out those other channels. They do a better job at explaining some of this. But if you have questions or comments, please leave them below, and I'd be glad to answer whatever I can answer, or maybe even point you in the right direction. Now let's go look at how I'm going to treat my dahlia beds for the winter. As you can see, I'm standing here in front of my dahlia bed. This is all part of the flower garden. If you're ever confused about where I am in the garden or sort of the shape of the garden and that kind of thing, head over to growinggreenfinger.com. I believe there's up top, there's a tab called the garden. If you click on that, scroll down somewhere, there should be a map. And I try to update that map yearly. And that's to give you a general idea as to where I am in the garden or what the different sections of my garden are. The dahlias got hit with a light frost week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. And I cut the majority of them back. A few of them sort of lingered on. They didn't get hit with the frost, maybe because they were in the center of the beds and they were protected enough. In fact, I have one right now that's flowering, and I'm honestly probably going to leave that for the next couple of days until the next light frost takes it out, because the dahlia flower is just too beautiful to cut out right now. That being said, I am going to cut out the remainder of these these stalks, stems. And by cutting out, all I just simply mean is I'm going to cut down the stems down to about 2 to 3 inches above the ground. You can leave them as high as 6, it doesn't really matter necessarily. And then I'm going to show you how I'm going to treat the bed for the winter. So let me get to cutting. I mentioned a few minutes ago about being in growing zone 8A and how I can leave the dahlias in the ground, but we've had a frost and it's knocked dahlias back. Well, here's 2 examples of dahlias which were knocked back. I cut them back, but they're putting on new growth. And one is baby yellow up front here. And the other one is this Japanese name, I presume. I can't pronounce it, but you can see it on screen. And it's also putting on new growth. I will not be cutting out the new growth. I'm just going to let nature do what it's going to do, because our daytime temps are still going to be fairly warm, but our nighttime temps are what's going to be impacting the dahlias the most. If we get more light freezes, that will kill back this new growth, which is not the end of the world. It's just something I have to keep in mind. So for instance, now I'm going to show you how I'm going to treat the bed, or give an example of how I'm going to treat the bed. I'm not going to cover this new growth up. I'm not going to cut it out. I'm not going to cover it up. I'm just going to let it be. But I will demonstrate over here, in this area here, where these dahlias are not growing. Or actually, this one right here, which I believe is Pooh, is starting to push up a little new growth. Not this one though. Marry Me seems to be going dormant, which is fine. Maybe it will push up new growth. But either way, I'm going to show you how I'm going to treat the area and prepare my beds for winter. What I'm currently doing, as you see me pawing at the ground like an animal here, is I'm fluffing up and tearing out. I have a, let's call it invasive weed. I believe it's called false garlic. It's a grass that grows from a bulb. The bulb is really far down. If you try to rip it out, all you wind up doing is tearing out the leaves and not the bulb itself. Therefore, it just pushes up new leaves, so on and so forth. So it's a challenge that I have to deal with in these beds, and there's not much I can do about it. What I can do though is rip up the leaves. I'll just drop them in place, as it were, because they all rot down. But it also gives me a chance to turn around and feel, where's my ground level? Where's the mulch? A lot of the hardwood bark mulch that I've put down over the last couple of years is rotting, and it's rotting quite nicely, which is good because it helps improve the soil. So that's a bonus. I'm going to add a little more compost to the area, and then I'm going to put a little more mulch on top. Now I'm switching over to a pine bark mulch for various reasons. One, it doesn't allow certain weeds to grow on top of it. So I have some weeds which will grow into this composting hardwood bark mulch. The other problem is that hardwood bark mulch, say that 3 times fast, tends to compact. Another reason for me to fluff this, and that's no good for the ground beneath, and it's no good for the plants. So again, I'm just going to tease it. I'll rip out some of this grass as I can. So I'm just going around. Right here, right back here, I can tell that the mulch is very thin. This is another reason for doing this. You can tell where your thin spots are, your thicker spots are. Again, if you're in the north and you're going to take out your dahlias for the year, you don't necessarily have to worry about this. But again, I'm leaving them in the ground. So if I'm going to leave them in the ground, I have to make sure that they're protected. I have to be careful. There's an ant pile right there. If you're new to the channel, fire ants are my nemesis. Fluffed it up and it looks kind of nice. Just going to add a little more compost to the area. Just going to put it right on top of the existing mulch that I have. If you see me doing something wrong, if you disagree with something that I'm doing, if you have any thoughts or opinions on this subject or matter, please leave your comments below. And again, I'm not putting down a massive layer. These dahlias have been in the ground 2 to 3 years. They've had multiple layers of compost and mulch placed on top of them. So I don't feel I need to be putting on a 3-inch layer on top of what's already here. Putting down a layer of fresh compost too also helps improve the soil and add nutrition for next year's growth. So there you go. I just started along the one side, and there's still a lot to do, but some of these dahlias still have a little bit life left in them, and if I can leave them just for a hair longer, let them absorb all the good sunlight, enjoy the last couple of flowers, and then let the frost take them. That's typically what you're supposed to do, is wait for the frost to take them, but you'll find that many gardeners don't do that for various reasons. In this case, I needed A, content, and B, I don't have time. So never seems to be enough time here in the garden. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut back, do a little weeding, add some compost, not a lot. You probably saw maybe 1 inch, 2 inches, and then mulch right on top. 2 to 3 inches, I would say. That should be more than enough to protect the dahlias, hopefully, over the winter. Now, just because I'm in a warm climate doesn't mean that all these dahlias will come back next year. They could catch some sort of disease over the winter. There could be rot underground, that then just affects all the other tubers, and then they wind up dying, so on and so forth. But if I can do this by adding the compost and the mulch, I can hopefully give the plants the best chance possible for them coming back next year. I will come back in here off camera, not today, and I will turn around and probably dig up 1 or 2 of these different varieties that I have multiples of already, just to ensure that I have dahlias of that type of variety for next year. So I'll maybe dig up a couple, one of the Lady Liberties, because I think I have 3 of them. I will dig up one of the Cornells, because I think I have 2 of them. Take those tubers up, divide them out, store them properly over winter, and then hopefully next year I can replant them, maybe in the new extension that I'm going to be doing this winter, hopefully. I'm not going to dig them all up, because I don't have to dig them all up. It's one of the reasons I moved to the south. But if I do a couple every year, then I'm just going to ensure that I have more of that variety for the next year, and I will continue to grow my dahlias, my dahlia collection, because they are wonderful plants. So that's going to wrap it up for today. Again, it's just about taking care of your dahlias, how you take care of them. And depending upon where you are, you may take care of them slightly differently than the way I take care of them, or the way that Laura takes care of them over in Oregon, or Jeff over in the UK. There's a bunch of different ways, but generally you want to try to keep your plants as healthy as possible. And then storing your dahlias. I have that clump that I dug out in the greenhouse. It's drying off right now. I have it upside down, so any excess moisture in those stems will hopefully drain out. If you guys have any questions, comments, etc., please leave them below. If you didn't know, I have an Etsy store that you can go to. Check out some of the products I have. There will be more stuff coming at the end of this week to that list. There's hopefully going to be some big news on Friday that I've been teasing forever, and I've been holding off on, and hopefully I think Friday I can finally announce it. So hang on for that. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click that bell icon to be notified when I do post up a new video. This way, hopefully you don't miss the big news or what I'll be doing next here in the garden itself. There's so much to do. Sometime this week I have to get the shade cloth off the greenhouse. There's other plants that I have to pull up, cut back, take out. If you haven't followed along on my community tab, please go check out the community tab on the YouTube homepage, because I posted up there, also on Instagram I think, that I got 2 new birdies beds for my birthday. So I have to assemble them, fill them before the spring. I won't worry, that's not a rush project, but they'll be replacing the last 2 wooden beds that I have over here on the side, because they're starting to rot away. Again, heat and humidity down here, it takes a toll on the woods. So out comes those beds. In go the 2 metal birdie beds here. That'll be happening again over the course of the winter. I'll be putting a new walkway in the back of the house. And I may wind up doing, it's going to be semi-garden related, because now I'm going to have a funny little void at the back of the house. I'll explain more of that when I get to it, but there'll be that project. Extending the flower beds, that project's coming up. There's so much to do. So many things going on. The gardening never stops. I'm going to be doing greenhouse winter gardening, so that will be coming up probably in the next few weeks. I'll be talking more and more about that and what I'll be growing in the greenhouse over the course of the winter. I did tell them about the Etsy store. So let me know in the comments below if there's something in particular you want to see about the garden, or if you have a question. Again, don't forget to go over to growinggreenfinger.com. Check out the garden page. Check out the ramblings page, where I post various articles about various topics and subjects. There's so much to see. I'm growing a garden here in Eastern North Carolina, growing zone 8A. There's a lot going on. Be sure to check it all out. There'll be links in the description below. So that's going to wrap it up for today. I'm going to catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.